But what's important here to understand is not so much who cares about the ox and who cares about the tooth and about the horn and about the leg. What's important here to see is how the rabbis, the process of what went on over here. See, that's what's important to see. From when Moses came down to Mount Sinai, and we're going to read it this week. I mean, those who are going to come to Shul on Shabbos morning, you'll be able to hear the reading of the Torah. You're going to hear one verse that's going to say that. But what I wanted to say is that it's not the whole idea here was not for us to remember exactly what the derivatives of tooth or horn or foot were. The idea of studying torts, of studying Baba Kama, is to open up one's mind to begin to understand how the Talmud looked at the Torah. I mean, because don't forget that there was a period just prior to the destruction of the temple, little historical perspective here, where not everybody was on the same page as the Pharisees. What this really embodies is the whole idea of Pharisaic Judaism, meaning that we're allowed to take what's written in the Torah and expand it out in all different directions. Beforehand, there was basically two groups, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The Sadducees were what they called literalists. They didn't buy anything unless it was specifically said in the Torah. All of these other extraneous things that came out that we've developed was forbidden by them. They were literalists. So you know what? For example, on Shabbos, they wouldn't have any hot food. Why? Because it says in the Torah, you shall not kindle any light in all of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. Now we interpret that to mean that you shouldn't strike a match and light something on the Sabbath. But if something was lit before and you cooked it before, it's okay. Not for them.
What was the Hebrew name of it? I always hear Pharisees.
Pharisees are Perushim. Perushim means separated. Mm-hmm. They separated. Sadducees comes from the word Sedukim, because the founder of the movement was a fellow by the name of Tzadok, and so that they were called the Pharisees. Mm-hmm. For example, also it says in the 3rd chapter of the Shema, when it talks about the tzitzit, mm-hmm. It said Ureisem also, you shall see them. Meaning, so how do you see them? So they used to hang them up in their house. That's how they know. So they were much more literalist in the Torah versus the Pharisees, which had this whole oral tradition that came down with them, which basically the Sadducees denied on it. So here, what we're really studying over here is a development over hundreds of years of people discussing and learning and debating and arguing and finally coming to some kind of an idea. So the Mishnah, which was written around the year 200 CE, so you could imagine there were, I think the numbers were 300 authors of the Mishnah. So in the Mishnah itself, in that period, people that would be called Atana, people that would have the reference of Atana, there was about 300, and I think there was about 1,700 Amoraim. Amoraim would be the authors of the Talmud. Now, the reason why there were so many more Amoraim than Tanoim is because as the years developed, the yeshivas got larger. For example, in Babylon, Torah study was much greater than it was in Israel itself. So in Israel, when after the destruction of Hadrian, during the second Jewish revolt, not the first war, which was 66 to 70, that wiped out pretty much Jerusalem. Hadrian's war, which was from 132 to 135, that wiped out the rest of the Jewish people basically. And what that was the Bar Kokhba revolt. And where did they go? They went pretty much to Babylon. And in Babylon they set up centers, Nahardai, Sura, Pompedisa. These were the big centers of learning. And anybody that was involved in these centers of learning, if you were admitted into the yeshiva, you already got the name of Amoraim. And they were the ones that, their responsibility was to take all of the knowledge that was gathered in the previous generations and somehow put it into a readable or discernible or intelligent format. And that's really what Baba Kama is all about, to show you how from a verse, like I'll just go through one verse, just to refresh our memories, because we're going to be reading it. This deals with the laws of Tam and Muad. These are, remember, how much does a Tam pay? Half. How much does a Muad pay? Full. How would you know that? It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah the words Tam pays half and the Muad pays full. That would be the simplest thing, right? That would be the very, very simplest thing. But it doesn't, but thank you very much, Daniel. I appreciate it. That is water for those who need. Okay? I want to read a sentence. Okay? But you have to pay attention. And I always remember this sentence because it was the one time I was studying it in school, and my father came home one day and he said, "You know what? Why don't you teach me the sentence?" And I got so discombobulated. And I'm still in my mind. You know how embarrassed you are. You're sitting there trying to explain to your father this thing that you were so proud of learning in school about a Talmud, and I couldn't for the life of me get it straight. The whole sentence made no sense to me. Why is it that way? So in my mind, this I could just see myself at the kitchen table with the Gemara. This Gemara that I was studying now. So he says like this. What does it say? Okay. This is verse number 35 in chapter 21. I want you to listen closely to this. If a man's ox shall strike his fellow's ox which dies. Okay? So an ox kills someone else's ox and the ox dies. They shall sell the living ox, okay, and divide the money. Okay? And the carcass too shall they divide. Okay? So this doesn't say anywhere how much percentage you have to pay of damages. Right? This doesn't tell us anything. All this tells us is that if an ox gores another ox and the ox dies, you take both entities. Right? You take both entities, the living ox, the dead ox, you sell it and divide the money. Okay, so in the beginning you think to yourself, holy maloney, what does this mean? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. If Hashem is trying to tell us that a tam pays half, he should have said, if the ox gores 3 times, pay half. If the ox after 4, pay full. But then he scratches his ear like this. Okay? Why? In order to give us an opportunity to use our brain cells. So I want to quote Rashi. Now Rashi is a very complicated Rashi. So I want you to pay close attention because Rashi basically sums up 20 pages of the Talmud that we would be debating about. Okay? Rashi says like this. On verse number, okay, you have to sell the ox. Again, if a man's ox strikes his fellow's ox which dies, he shall sell the living ox and divide its money. Now that makes absolutely no sense. Why would you want to sell the living ox and sell its money? Why? What good does that do? Okay? So he says like this. B'shavim hakosef medaber. The verse is talking about a very specific case where both oxen are worth exactly the same amount of money. That's the only case it's talking about. That means, and what does he say? Shoyer shave reish. An ox that's worth $200. Okay, makes it simple, Rashi. An ox that's worth $200. Shehemish shor shavaresh, that kills an ox that was worth $200. Bein shahanavela shavaharbe, whether the carcass is worth much. Bein shehishava ma'at, whether the carcass is worth very little. It doesn't make a difference whether the carcass is worth $100 or whether the carcass is worth $20. We don't care. If one takes half of the living, the chatzi mes, and half of the dead. So if you want to start jotting down the numbers here, look here, okay. So we have here a 200, 200, and a 200. Okay. Now this 200 all of a sudden became 100. Let's play that game, okay. Now each guy is going to take half. So one guy gets here 100, and here he gets 50. Okay? And the other guy gets half of the living and half of the dead. Nimtza, we find, kol echad, each one, both the plaintiff and both the defendant, or the perpetrator and the guy who was hit, mafsid, loses chatzi nezek, half of the worth. Kishehizika hamesa, which the animal which was damaged died. Right? Think about this. Each guy takes half that's worth 300. Each guy takes 150. So now each guy loses how much? $50. That's right. And this is exactly what the damage was. Because the ox was worth 200. Now it's worth 100. He loses 50. He only has to walk away with a 50% loss.
Why? You lost me totally.
Okay.
Here.
Wait. An ox was first worth 200. Now he's dead.
Right.
His carcass is worth 100.
100.
How much damage did he sustain?
How fast was the train?
$100, right? We all admit he sustained $100 damage, right? Now, you take the living ox of 200,
Right.
you sell it, and you take the dead ox
Right.
and you sell it. How much do you get together? 300. You split it down the middle. How much does he have?
100.
How much does each guy walk away losing?
$50.
Okay. So you got that? So each guy only loses 50% of the damage. Means that the nizik, the one whose ox was killed, it only picks up 50% of the damage. And the mazik, the guy who did the damage, only pays 50% of the damage. But listen, Rashi's not finished yet. Okay? So Rashi interprets that this verse number 35, is dealing with only a very specific case. Only if the two oxen are worth the same amount. Why? Because
And it's under 3 times.
what? This is the first time.
Oh,
Right? This
oh,
is
right,
the
okay.
first time. Oy yochel. Let's say Rashi then goes on to say, possibly, even also, kishe'enim shavin b'dmeim. Maybe this is also true when they're not of equal value. Okay, now we're going to have another case. Okay? Kishehen chayim, when they're living. So let's say one ox is worth 600 and the other ox is worth 200. Okay? Let's just do that for a second. 600 and 200. Amar HaKosov, then the Torah tells us, V'chotzu es shneihem. You have to split both of them, right? Isn't that what the verse said? You shall sell the living and divide it, and the carcass too shall they divide. Okay, so now you have a $600 ox.
What do they do with the carcass?
What?
What do they do? Can they eat it?
No, you can't eat it, but you can sell it to a Gentile. Gentile can eat it. You can use it for whatever, a number of different things. Hide. You can make shoes, boots out of it. It has some value. The carcass has value. So now you say like this. So Marta, if you say yes, this works on all cases. It doesn't only work on when they're equal value. If you say no, this is true for every case. The Torah didn't specify how much the value of the ox was, did it? No. Only the Talmud tells us. If you say though, pa'amin, there's going to be times, shahamazik, the guy that did the damage, mishtaker harbe, will gain. He'll earn money. When the carcass is worth more than what the damaged ox is worth. So let's say, like we'll reverse the cases. The $200 ox damaged the $600 ox. Okay, now from the 600 he became worth 300. Let's have half of his value. So now what do you have together? 500, right? You sell the living one of 200. You sell the carcass for 300. So you've taken in $500. Then you split it. So this guy gets 250, and this guy gets 250. So what did we do over here? So here we rewarded. It's a scam. So we rewarded the guy that's driving the Yugo that smashes into the Ferrari.
Comes out money ahead.
What? He comes out ahead because now you have to take the Ferrari that's worth, let's say, now damaged 50,000. Let's say it, and the Yugo not damaged is worth 2,000. There's nothing. So the guy, the Yugo owner, just walked away with $25,000. So that doesn't make sense. So obviously, the case of where the ox, let's say for example, the $600 ox, the damage E is worth more, doesn't work. We all agree to that, right? So obviously that could not be a case. The efsher, and it's also impossible, sheyomer hakosov, where the Torah would tell us, shehiya mazik nishka, that the damager is going to be rewarded. That's impossible. No, we can't accept that. That's chayte nisker. That means someone who sinned can never be rewarded. Can't reward a guy who sins. It's like, with an illicit marriage, the rule is he has to get divorced no matter what. Even if they love each other. Why? Because chayte nisker, you can't allow the sinner to benefit. Or there's going to be another case. Let's take a third piece of paper. Okay. Where the damagee is going to get more money than his ox was worth. Because what's going to happen? Let's take a $600 ox. Damage is a $200 ox. Okay? The $200 ox now becomes worth $100. You sell both of them. You ended up with $700. Each guy gets $350. So this guy here, who only sustained $100 damage, is going to get $350.
That's called pain and suffering.
Then, for his ox. So now, so what we're going to do is, so now this for this guy, this Yugo, the Yugo is going to run in front of the Ferrari. It's going to want to get damaged by the Ferrari because now it knows. Okay, so shechatzi to make. Because half of the goring ox, Shavin Yaiser, is worth more from all of the ox that was damaged. So that doesn't make sense either, right? It doesn't make sense that the damage he should end up getting $350 when he only sustained $100 worth of damage. Okay?
Kenny says that this was an ox that went to Westminster Ox Show.
And then that was it.
Best in class.
Best in class.
Oh boy.
So you see how Rashi sums up the entire 7 pages of the Talmud to tell us that this verse, so if you're going to go home tonight and your neighbor is going to be reading Exodus and they're going to know exactly what is the meaning of verse number 35 in chapter 21, you're going to know. You're going to say that this verse is only specifically speaking about a case where the oxes are of equal value. And what does the Torah tell us? The Torah tells us that in those kind of cases, in that case, you only pay half a damage. We go back to our initial first case of the 200, he only pays 50. So now, if this ox should now be worth $600, damage an ox of $200, and the carcass is worth $100, how much does the owner have to pay this guy?
50.
Very good. 50. Right, 50. Because here, a $600 ox damages a $200 ox. Okay, and the value of the carcass is 100, so he only sustained $100 of damage. How much does he have to pay him? 50. Right? And in that case, you wouldn't follow along what the Torah says.
No.
You wouldn't sell this ox. What would happen is he would have to take out of his pocket $50 and pay the guy and have a good day. Or what they would do is they would sell the carcass. They would sell the carcass. Each guy would take $50 out of the carcass. And it is a little weird in this case because, one second, so you sell the carcass, so each guy sustains only 50% of the damage, but really this guy is walking away with $650, is he not? He gets to keep his ox. He gets to keep his ox. Plus he gets to get $50. Why should he even get $50 from the damage? No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't get the carcass. He pays. No, he's good. It's good. He pays. He doesn't get anything of the carcass. He pays $50 out of his pocket, and that's it and finished. So now he might have to sell his ox. If he doesn't have money to pay, he might have to sell his ox to $600, but he'll only have to give him $50 of the $600. And the same thing is true the other case in reverse. Okay, so now we know from this case here. So just listen to this. So from this case, from this one verse, we've learned that in cases of a damage to damage, ox to ox, the first 3 times, everybody only gets 50% of the damages. That's it. And the case will only come out. The case referring to in the Torah is only when 2 oxen are worth exactly the same amount. Now, why couldn't the Torah tell us that? That's the secret that we'll have to ask Moshe Rabbeinu when he comes back with Mashiach Tzidkenu. Why couldn't have made it any simpler? Okay? Okay, so he said, then he finishes, Rashi says, so al korcha, therefore you're forced. Now that we've established it that the Torah is talking about an oxen that are worth exactly the same amount of money. And to teach you that the tam has to only pay half of damages. Talmud, and also because they're equal value, we've learned that even those cases where they're not of equal value, you have to only pay half of damages. You estimate what the carcass is, and whatever he lost out of that, because of the death of the animal, he takes half of the damage and he walks away. So if we estimate that this now he was 200, and now it's worth 100, so he lost only $100, give him $50 and tell him to go on his way. Then Rashi asks the key question here. Why Why does the Torah tell us in this language, why doesn't he just say, let him pay half? Why does he have to go through this whole rigmarole of selling the living animal, then selling the carcass, then putting the money in a pot, then splitting the pot? Why doesn't he just say, if he damages, pay half? Lalamid, to teach you, she'ein hatam mishalem elemi gufay. The ox only pays from what his value is. That's it. Only what he is worth. What does that mean? Ve'im nogach umeis. If he gored and died, einan nizik noitel es hanavela. Then the owner of the damage, he could only take the carcass. So here's another case. What happened? Okay. I want you to keep awake. Hold on. An ox worth $200. Okay. And this ox is worth $200. Now, this ox now became worth $100. Okay? How much does he have to pay? 50. He has to pay 50. Unfortunately, for this guy, we'll call this guy the damagee. Oh, well, what happened? Sorry for this guy. This ox had a heart attack. While he was goring, he died of a heart attack. That's it, he's dead. This ox is now dead on arrival. Dead. So when they come, they see one ox worth $100. He's dead. Then the animal that gored, he's dead. And this guy is only worth now, he died of a heart attack and he's only worth 40. That's it. Okay? So he went from 200 down to 40. So what happens? But how much does he owe him?
How much was the other one?
It was worth
$20.
It was, he damaged.
50.
He owes him 50, right? But he's only worth 40. Too bad. He only gets what the carcass is worth. No more, no less. So he has to pray that gore my ox, but don't drop dead. Okay? That's why the Torah tells us that how do you adjudicate this case? You take the living ox and the dead ox, put them together and sell. But if both of them died, so Rashi sums it up, he says, Lalamit, to teach, she'eina tam shalom elami gufay, that the tam, what's the tam? What's a tam? A tam is what? Half. But that's the rookie damager, right? He's a rookie damager, right? He's a rookie, okay? So the rookie damager only pays what he's worth from his body. He doesn't go into the guy's pocket. So you could have Rothschild's ox, okay? And he's worth $3 billion. His ox go from 200 down to 40, and damages were 50. He only gets $40. He doesn't collect everything else. He only takes what is worth the things. And if it doesn't reach to half of the damage, meaning if you're worth 50 but he's only worth 40, you're only 50, but the nevela, the carcass is only worth 40, yafsit. He loses. Who loses? The damagee. The damagee loses. So this is what the Torah was telling us, that in the first few stages, the first, second, and third, it seems that God made it lenient for the damager. He made it lenient for him. You only have to pay half of the damages, and it only has to come out of the carcass of the animal. He can't sue you. Okay?
Does he pay nothing, or does he get to 40?
He gets to 40. He gets to 40. He's out $10. He's out $10. But could be that this ox could be worth nothing. Like, he gored him, and by mistake he slipped, and he fell off a cliff. Okay? Now the guy comes and he says, look, my carcass is laying here. Where's the ox that gored my ox? Guess what? You see down there that you go get it.
I want to know why God cares whether or not you got $200 worth of an ox and the other guy.
What do you mean why?
Why is God
to put it on
interested?
hold indefinitely?
I mean, why does God care whether or not, these...
No. Well, first of all, God cares because these are rules of civilization.
No, that part I understand.
Don't forget that these are rules of civilization, and he wanted to teach us a lesson that in the first few times you can't expect people to do extraordinary means.
But he had to know that there was going to, like, for example, we were talking about Herod's temple. There was corruption, and there was corruption. You mentioned last week about, some guy whose father had a few bucks became the rabbi of the town.
Right.
So, I mean, God had to know this. So I guess my question still stands. Why would he care whether or not, some guy appeared before a court? And you gave a good example with this. The guy who came into town and he got the raw end of the stick.
Right.
Right. They gave him exactly the opposite of what he should have gotten.
But that's the old adage. Never judge a religion by its adherents. Only judge a religion by what is written, right? By its tenets. So here the Torah is telling you a rule that I want that for the first 3 times I want to be lenient, to give the guy an opportunity. I want the damager to pay something. I don't want him to get away with nothing, but I want this to go out as a call to be more careful. And this is part of
light bulb.
To set the light bulb, to be more careful. And I give him 3 chances. Now then, God doesn't care. Now whether courts are corrupt or not corrupt, that's not what God cares. I mean, obviously He cares because later on He says, you know what? Don't follow a bad court, stay away, don't take bribes. I mean, he goes into a tremendous, lengthy, it was just in today's, he says, do not pervert the judgment of your destitute person in his grievance. Distance yourself from a false word. Do not execute the innocent or the righteous, for I shall not exonerate the wicked. Do not accept a bribe, for the bribe will blind those who see and corrupt words that are just. These are all things that are geared towards whom is he talking to? Judges. That's what he's telling the judges. He's begging them to be honest in court. But listen, there was many stories in the Talmud where one guy put on his robe, a judge put on his robe to sit down and to judge, and it was a minimum of 3 bezdin, and he put his hand in his pocket, and there was money in there, and he excused himself from the case. Now he did not know who put it. Some guy slipped the money into his pocket. He did not know who, but the mere fact that there was money there told him already that this is not for him. That somehow he was going to figure, okay, if it's between 10 and this guy and this, and then who's more likely to put me? It already would cloud the whole issue. He excused himself from the case and he said, I can't do this case, and give back the money here. Whoever it is can take it. So we're talking 2 completely separate issues. The rules that God are the building blocks. What we do with them, that's something else. But your question doesn't only apply to what does God care if this guy pays $100 or $50. What does God care in general what we do? I mean,
if you take it in the broader context of what goes on in the world, if God's worried about somebody, I was being really rhetorical here. If God's worried about somebody getting $100, but you can get crazy with the argument. Say, what about the kid that grows up, that goes through a whole life with some miserable disease, or parents who have to. There's all kinds of.
But one is non-exclusive of the other. I mean, that's like why should the United States care?
No,
think about the government of the United States. Mm-hmm. Okay, you look through the budget, it's like this. If I remember, I'll never forget that one time Reagan came out to the State of the Union and he had a pile of papers like this up to here, and he said, "You know what this is? To the American people, never really get a chance to see what a budget looks like. The federal budget. This is the federal budget, from the floor up to his waist. Okay." Now you go through the federal budget, and you will see that they give money to the most insane, inane, benign, stupidest things in the world, right? The stupid. Now you might think, okay, why should Congress? We have so many huge problems. Why should they care about the potholes that are or the highways? You know why? Because every little act, every little thing that happens in the United States tells us what kind of a civilization we are. From the littlest kid who goes to preschool and gets a warm lunch, that says volumes about the kind of society that we are. Now you might think, what the hell should Congress get involved in and caring about that? You know what, that a kid that's sitting in Lafayette, Louisiana should get a hot lunch. Don't we have bigger issues to worry about in the world? Sure, we have bigger issues.
But that goes to the constituency.
But that's it, because you know why? Because everything that's enacted in rules and regulations in any country speaks volumes. Take any rule. It'll tell you so much about what is going on. Freedom of the press. Just take the basic articles of the Constitution. Will tell you volumes of what. Now, if you were an outsider, an alien who fell down into this world, and you looked at the articles of the amendments of the Constitution, and you read them, and you said, "Wow, ha, ha." Then you actually came to the United States, and you saw what was going on over here. You'd say, "Rabbi Shalom, look at this. We have this says here, but this is going on here, or we have this. It says in the Constitution that I have a right to live in peace. You know what? But yet I walk in the street and my heart is pounding. I live in fear. What happened? What happened?"
No, but my point is that God has bigger fish to fry.
Or the Second Amendment. Right. Or on the other hand, a guy would say, so therefore, it's a good question, it's a good point. Now take it back to the Torah. The Torah will have many rules and regulations, and we talked about this at one Torah class in Parshas Bo, when the Jews got out of Egypt, and God said to the Jewish people, "Thou shalt not break a bone in the Pesach sacrifice." And the same question came up. Oh, come on, let's be honest. Here we talk about a God. How do we define God? The three Western religions define God exactly the same way. It's very interesting. How do you define God? One is that He's omnipotent. He's all-powerful. Okay? So here you have a God that's all-powerful. Two, He's all-knowing. He knows everything. And three, He's omnibenevolent. He's all-caring. Okay? So you take this spirit or this institute, whatever you want to call it, this God, and you think about it, all powerful, all knowing, all loving. He gives He cares about whether a guy sits at home in Tel Aviv on Pesach night cracking a bone. What the heck does He care about that for? I mean, all he should care about is that we should be good people and believe in Him. Should be 2 commandments in the Torah, that's it. So the guy who wrote Sefer HaChinuch, there's a book that was written in the 13th century, and I talked about this a number of times. How did he teach his children the Torah? Every Saturday morning they would sit down and they would go over all of the laws of that parsha. Except, of course, like for example, this week would be impossible because it would take literally more than just a morning. But he came to that law and he explained to his children. He says, "You know what, children? It's a very good question, just like Ted asks. What does God care about? This guy gets $100, or why should He care about cracking a bone? He has bigger problems in the world. Like genocide going on, diseases going on. Like you said, why does He care? You know why?" And he explained it in beautiful language to them. And he said, because people are judged by their actions. You go into someone's house and you look around the kitchen table, you will know if these parents are good parents or these parents chazerim. You will know when children are sitting over there and eating with a fork and a knife, and they're polite and they use a napkin, and there's this,
and they know what breakfast is.
And they know what breakfast is.
Cheetos.
You know what? This is a family. When you go into a house and people are sitting there like this and they're cracking the bones, this is not. And certainly when you talk about a holiday meal where Hashem is supposed to be visiting us and we're sitting there cracking bones. So now it's a different perspective, because now we're not looking at that individual guy, but we're looking at an ideal of how people should live. And when you think about that, that's why God cares about each individual action.
I'll take your point about that, but I want to go from a different approach. These 2,500 people that comprised, the Amoraim and the Talmud that got together and did this, it gets summed up as God did this. But this is 800 years of back and forth and this and that and shouldn't we and blah 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 blah. This went on 800 years.
Right.
And so the argument, and that's I guess why I asked the question. This didn't just come out. I mean, it wasn't revealed at Sinai, and what
Oh, this was revealed.
Well, okay,
it was
okay,
revealed.
All right.
That's
okay.
I mean, isn't our tradition that everything's in the Mishnah and the Gemara was passed orally
Exactly.
from Moses,
Exactly.
Joshua, etc.
Right. That's the
It is, but I mean,
that's the tradition.
Yeah, but a lot of these guys weren't born then, so.
No. But the point is that the Torah was written this way for 2 purposes. One is that it was passed down orally. That's the difference between the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Second is that when you make a blessing at the Torah, you'll notice an interesting thing. When you get called up to the Torah, or not even, every morning we say the morning blessings. When we talked about this. You make a blessing, Baruch atah Hashem, blessed you are God who's chosen us, whatever. Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you, Nosein HaTorah, he who gives the Torah. Grammatically, that's wrong, because he's not he who gives the Torah. It's Nosan HaTorah, he who gave the Torah. Why did they write it in a present tense? To tell us that the Torah has to become mine. Every day he re-gives it. And that's why he allowed. Sure, there's going to be times when rabbis are going to sit and adjudicate a case and they're going to get it wrong. And of the thousands and the millions of din Torahs that went forth in the history of the world, I'm sure there were plenty of times that the rabbis missed it. You know, the rabbis thought about it. They said, listen, to the best of our ability.
There's plenty of things in the Talmud that are questionable.
Sure,
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
About concerning women and what happens if a woman.
Yes.
You know the whole.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, of course.
There's plenty of things that are.
Of course.
So
of course.
I guess where if you take the argument that the whole thing was handed down at Mount Sinai and the oral Torah, and the Sadducees would take issue with that, of course.
Sure, of course.
And there's a sect of Judaism that would say, no, wait a minute, that couldn't have happened.
Sure.
But the rabbinic Judaism, the thing the stage that this set, for our civilization. Otherwise, we couldn't have gotten along as Jews without this thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, I understand the reason for it, but I think for me the question is that I think that God's a busy God, and how he gives human beings the wisdom to deal with these issues.
Right.
But I don't know how I can't make the leap from God, said this thing and all of a sudden 1,700 people or 2,500 people come to the same conclusion over 700 or 800 years. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, okay.
You know where I'm going with this?
So start again.
Okay.
We have the Torah.
Yeah.
Moses comes down from the Torah. Okay? He gives the Torah to the Jewish people. This is the 5 books of Moses.
Right.
Within the 5 books, there's a number of different issues God spoke about.
Just throw rocks at people.
There's 613 basic commandments in the Torah. Some deal with interpersonal relationships, some deal with our relationship with Him, with prayer, swearing, lying, all different things, sacrifices. Okay. So now, the guy comes up to Moses and said, you know what, okay, this is a very real case. I'm grazing, my ox is grazing next to Bob's ox. His ox gores my ox. I want him to pay. What do I do? So what do we do? So Moses says, okay, let's look at the rules and regulations, because God did tell us about something this. He looks into the rules and regulations and says, okay, Bob only has to pay 50% of the money. Okay, now what happens if he didn't gore me like it says over here, but instead of goring him, he kicked him in the tuchus? He kicked the ox in the tuchus. It doesn't say anywhere about kicking in the tuchus. So Moses had to say, okay, you know what, we have to extrapolate this, because God only mentioned A, B, and C, so now we have a case of D, E, and F. And that's the way the legal system always works, no matter any legal system.
Takes it down, and the next
every legal system works that way.
At that time, they didn't. We're talking 800 years later when this came down. So in the time of Moses and Aaron, they didn't have, they didn't have these. It didn't get there.
So what you're saying is, do you have a problem with them interpreting the actual Chumash, or them coming to a wrong conclusion?
No. What I'm saying is, what I have a problem with is how you attribute 1,700 human beings with speaking for God. I mean, I can understand Moses speaking for God, but 1,700 people who took 800 years to come to a conclusion. How is it that And then using his argument about back in the time when God dictated this whole thing to Moses, well, they would have known all these rules back then, but yet it didn't come about till much later. Why is it that these rules, they weren't put into place until much later?
There's reasons why it wasn't written till now. There was reasons. It was an oral tradition, and it came down. And why at that specific time? Because the Jews were booted out of Israel.
And then later on, you had to have Rashi tell you what it meant, because you didn't know what it meant.
This is a process. This is a process, and I'd be the first to say there is a degree of faith in here, there is a degree of faith that these 1,700 people or 2,500 people were people that were serious, didn't come to the same conclusion. There's many arguments in the Talmud, but we had to come to some kind of an agreement. We do pay half or whole, so they pay half. You do this, you do that, you do that. So they finally said, enough with the debating. This is going to be the rules and the regulations, and you take a certain leap if you're Orthodox and believe that the Talmud is divinely inspired, that these people were special people at a very special time, just like Elijah was inspired during his period, and David was inspired during his period. Ravina and Rav Ashi were inspired at a certain level. They weren't prophets, but they were inspired at a certain level to kind of get it right.
No doubt about that. This
is what. But you're talking now. I brought in a new element over here. So besides the fact that it came down orally, it came down in a very miraculous manner. That these 1,700 guys, because of their commitment to the project, God blessed them with a special ability to get it right. That's what separates us from conservative and reform.
Well, I mean,
that's what separates Orthodox from conservative and reform. Where Orthodox says that the Talmud is the last resort, it does have a veto power. That means if I say, you know what, I don't like what the Talmud says, well, you have a choice. I could leave. I can't go and abrogate what the Talmud says. I could leave this movement. But if I'm Orthodox, I say to myself, I supplement, or not I supplement, but I subordinate myself to the words of the Talmud, versus the other two streams of Judaism that don't.
Well, that's another issue.
That's,
You're talking about Orthodox. I don't want to go there about the Orthodox, right? because that.
But I see it too as that we're learning critical thinking. We're taking.
Right. That's exactly why God wrote it in this manner, to allow us to really, because it would be impossible to put every case in the Torah.
They're arguing it. The point is that it's being argued back and forth. And the idea that I guess that's what really
Where's
I'm
the
trying to say.
argument if it came from God?
Yeah, if it came from God, why they're arguing for 800 years back and forward and back and forward and back and forward. Yeah. And the argument that it was handed right down then and there, they wouldn't be arguing over it for 800 years if it was handed down, right? They would know and end the story.
Okay, so now that's a different question. Now we're going against another field. If it was handed down, then how could you possibly have any arguments? So the thing is that there's two parts here. You're right, Bob is right when he said it wasn't handed down, and Mark is right when he says it was handed down. Because we learned here, because you're supposed to be Talmidei Chachamim already. You're supposed to be already scholars, okay? So part of it was that what was handed down were the general principles. Right. All of the principles were handed down to Moses. Right. Various cases came up much later, right? Various cases such as the derivatives of the tooth, the derivatives of the foot. This is what Bob is right. Those did not come down, and those had to be adjudicated. Cases came before them where not everything exactly was passed down. The principles were there. They had to look at it, and that's how now you get an argument between Hillel and Shammai, where Hillel is the more lenient, the more compassionate, the Democrat, the liberal. Shammai is the more conservative, the Republican, whatever it is, and that's how that's what happens.
Hence my argument. That what does God care? Because all of these people are arguing back and forth. If God wanted you to know the thing, He would have said it right then and there. You get half.
I don't get you. I don't get you.
Now I lost you.
Why not?
Because if God wanted
613 mitzvahs.
Of course, He wanted it to be a human process.
Right. Yeah.
With the idea that we would get it right. There's even a case in the Talmud. There's a case in the Talmud of where it was a complicated case of not about damages, but it was concerning a certain oven, whether it would become impure or not impure. And Rabbi Eliezer, who was the greatest of the scholars, said it's impure. The rest of the rabbis said it's pure. So he was able to invoke a heavenly voice that said, I agree with Eliezer. They refused to listen to the heavenly voice. He said, screw the heavenly voice. I mean, heavenly voices are not human beings. We were given the responsibility. And then God said, Nitzchuni b'ni nitzchuni. You are right. What's the things? Labas koil. Right?
That's what I-
You know,
That's what I, the only one I
yeah.
know.
It's you. We don't pay attention to heavenly voices because He gave us the principles, and now He wants you to battle it out. And He gave you criteria.
Yeah, but He also gave us floods and hailstorms.
But what is that?
I mean, you talk about the human process arriving at something. But I mean, God had His mind made up. This is how I want you to live. You don't live this way. I wiped the planet out.
That doesn't.
That
What does that have? No, that has nothing to do. We're talking about a legal process that we're trying to build a legal system. It has nothing to do with.
No, it has to do with the point that God, what you were saying earlier about, God wants a process. Okay, but earlier on, before the Torah, during the time of Noah. Okay, what was the process? He said, look, the world is wicked and I'm going to wipe it out.
There was no Torah.
No.
Why then, if God would do that, why couldn't He just say, look, this is it? Or at Sinai, when the Jews made the golden calf.
No, that's because we're talking about the flood
One is
and
morality, and one is how people live together in civilization. What the thinkers need to think about is, what did God want me to do?
now this we're getting far. We're getting too far afield here. We're talking about the right.
What this is about
Is
when somebody kills your ox,
Right.
you shouldn't take out a gun and shoot that other person.
Right.
Okay, that's not the response. The response
And
is measured
that part I
human
know.
beings. Okay,
But
as
what
a
does God care about it? I
measured
still don't understand.
God cares
Okay,
because
forget it. We're just going round in circles. Forget
Okay.
it.
Forget it.
Okay, so let's continue.
back
So
to the
we're
pit.
going back over here. We're going back over here. So here we said.
I have a question about this.
About this, okay. Only sticking to the issues, and morality and philosophy will deal with.
You agree with me?
Troubled
I
by
agree partly.
Oh, partly. Okay.
that you don't look at who owns the ox.
When I finish, you'll agree with me.
Yeah. Go ahead. Shh. Go ahead.
God is lenient. You
Right.
have to be a fourth. You have to have a fourth
Exactly.
strike before you pay the
That's
full
right.
thing.
Exactly.
Okay. So He's lenient. all
Right.
Fair enough. But the guy who sells, he's got a damaged ox.
Right.
And it sells, and it's worth $40. That's all he has to pay. But he may be worth $1 million.
Doesn't make a difference.
Why?
Doesn't make a difference because the rules are the rules. Well, I mean, the same. An ox is an ox. I mean, you know what? Things
But it
happen.
doesn't take into consideration the.
No,
the
you
person
can't because
who owns
why?
the ox.
Because once already, if there's rules written, and this is the rule, you pay only half the damage for the first 3 damages. It's a blind rule. Because if you then go out of the parameters and say, you know what, no, this only concerns someone that can't afford it, then you're making amendments for poor people, which you can't.
You can't judge by how deep their pockets are.
Right.
It's just a common
Right.
animal. So if
Right.
a man in Beverly Hills chooses to send his ox to Oxford, and the other ox remains dumb, so be it. An ox is an ox. It's basically.
No, but these rules have to be blind. They have to. You can't take into consideration if the guy is worth $100 million
Right.
or if he's worth $200, because if you start now going into subjective, that say, hey, you know what, you're Rothschild, and you should. Now, if I'm the rabbi, if I'm a good rabbi, I go to Rothschild later, and I might say to Rothschild, listen,
Make him whole.
legally, you're right.
Make him whole.
Legally, you're right. You only have to pay $40 because that's the way it goes. Finished. That's the way it is because you know what? That's where Hashem said it, and it's good for Rothschild. It's also good for the schlepper. If you want to do good for heaven, if you don't want this guy in Yom Kippur to start davening and to say Hashamnu Maganu Gazalnu, you know what? And he's crying because he has no food for his children, and you were the cause of that. That's a totally separate issue. That's morality. That's morality. That's being a moral person.
this is
But
the framework.
legally, you're free. You're free.
How about these other scenarios where there's disparate values between
Correct.
This only
The only-
applies to equal value.
No, because this verse only applies to equal value.
That's what I said.
But now we've extrapolated it. Now what Rashi is saying, now we've taken this and we've extrapolated it to mean that even in cases where there's no equal value, you only get 50% of the damages. What Rashi is saying,
Unless the person benefits from.
you only get 50% no matter what.
Even-
No matter what.
even if you-
It doesn't matter if the ox is worth $5,000 or if the ox is worth $50. You're only going to get 50% of your damage. That's what the Torah is telling us through this case. The Torah is saying that if your ox is worth $5,000 and it lost $1,000 worth of value, the most you're going to walk away with is $500. That's it. Finished. End of discussion. It doesn't matter what that ox is going to be worth. Now it matters because if that ox dies and it's not worth anything, then you're out. You know, you're out. That's the way.
So this is really the very basics for civilization. And when you talk about being a Rothschild and being able to pay more than, if you've got the basic framework, then it's up to you to go beyond and.
Now, if you're a good guy, if you're a good guy, and you know, it's like you know what? It's like, God forbid, you know what? There are huge HMOs, huge HMOs with huge deep pockets. Now, one day, this family that's poor, doesn't read the rules, doesn't know, they're whatchamacallit, expired. And they keep getting a notice from the HMO that, you know, you haven't paid your premium, Okay, the next day the husband gets a heart attack. Okay, now, you would come to Pacific Care, who just sold out for $10 billion and say, you know what, here's a poor immigrant. No, they have no liability. They have no liability. You know what? They sent the 3 notices, whatever rules. I'm not an expert on healthcare rules, but sure. Now, if you want to say to Pacific Care, listen, you know what? This guy's going to go to the press and he's going to bashmutz you, and they're going to drag your face and drag your mud. Okay, so maybe the corporation will use its seichel and say, you know what? We'll pay out we'll reinstate it. But that's a moral issue. That's not a legal issue. Right. Once they walk out of court and they say, you know what, you're innocent, and we stand there and we say, look at that chazerim, look at them, the $10 billion, and they're all smirking. That's too bad, baby. That's too bad. It's like, you know what, I remember a few years ago, Schwarzenegger had some damage. He was suing this guy for, and people were saying, Schwarzenegger, come on. So he pulled back the lawsuit. You know, so it was some dumb thing he was suing his gardener for something. So here's a guy that's worth $50 million is suing this poor guy for $1,000 because he cut his hedges too short or too high. So he was embarrassed and he took the lawsuit out. But he might have won in court. He might have won. So the case. But
he hasn't learned anything from all these laws in a way. If he has to be embarrassed to withdraw the lawsuit.
Listen.
He hasn't learned anything. Civilization
just like you know, Bob brings up a case. You know, Rothschild might also not have learned anything.
That's right.
You know, he walks away and he says, you know what, that's too bad. My ox is only worth $20. Sorry. That's right. This is the rules.
From giving away money.
That's it. Finished. You know what? You're finished. That's the way it goes. I mean, okay, you know, there are cases where sometimes Rothschild used to walk by. The legend was that Baron de Rothschild used to walk to his house every day, take a little stroll, and at the entrance of his house, there was always waiting for him 2 brothers who were very poor, and he would give each one a buck. Okay, a buck or whatever, a shilling, or whatever he would give over there. One day, what? A dime, yeah.
That was Rockefeller.
Yeah.
Rockefeller.
So he would give a dollar to each guy. Came one day, one of the brothers is not there, so he drops a dollar into the thing. So the brother says, "Hey, where's the other buck?" So he says, "Your brother died." So he says, "So who inherits him? You or me?" You're his inheritor. I'm the guy who should inherit the buck, not you. Obviously, got Rothschild to give him another buck because he was quick-witted. But that's c'est la vie. And that's the way it goes. Sometimes it's an ugly situation. The legal system is not very pretty at times. And sometimes these guys walk away and the poor guy ends up. But that's why the Torah tells us over and over again. Think about this for a second, okay? Just to bring up your case. Here's one for the, you know.
But, you know, you legislate fair. You can't legislate compassion.
That's exactly it. Here it says, "Do not pervert the judgment of your destitute person in his grievance." Okay? This is a rule to the judges. Do not pervert the judgment of your destitute person in his grievance. Now, why should the Torah tell us that? If you're a good judge. Because you know why? Because the judge thinks to himself like this, listen, you know what? Here's a poor guy, and here's Rothschild. Now, not that I'm going to screw Rothschild. You know, I don't want to screw Rothschild. But what happens is that really Rothschild has a responsibility of giving tzedakah, right? There is a mitzvah of giving charity. So why should I go to him and raise money from him and give it to the poor guy? I'll just say, you know what, you owe him the money, and that will be that. And Rothschild will give out $100 to this guy. No one's going to be any poorer for the cause. He'll give him the money, and that way I'll be a good guy. The Torah says, do not pervert the judgment of your destitute and his grievance, because you know why? Because then there's no end to this. There's no end. And the same thing is true, it says about the other way. You know, you're going to, Rothschild walks into court. Here's his Baron de Rothschild. Do you know how much money he gives to charity a year? Take Moses Montefiore. And the judge is going to stand there and he's going to say, he's going to convict Moses Montefiore. He's going to say something against Moses Montefiore. This great saint, this great guy. Don't respect anybody. In court, it's court. That's the way, that's not so easy, Judge, is it?
What about the
Actually,
situation?
it gets easier. The
Oh.
toughest thing,
Yeah.
the toughest thing is to forget who you were before you took the bench.
Oh.
That's not it. The toughest thing is to not be an advocate for either side.
Well, that's-
Neutral.
Okay.
The scenario where the ox that is killed is worth a lot of money. The other ox is only worth $200. The one that gets killed is worth $1,000.
Okay.
And you say the one who is damaged is entitled to receive 50%.
Correct.
Where's the guy where's he going to come up with 50%?
He's not. Only 50%, only up to the value of the ox.
Just to the value.
Just to the value of the ox. So if your Yugo smashes the Ferrari, you end up with the Yugo and
Learn which part of town.
yeah, that's what it is. Now, the same thing is true. Now, we've gone through a lengthy case over here, talking about the Tam and the Mu'ud, to give us a little bit of an understanding of how we went from one verse in the Torah, and we extrapolated all the way to knowing that's 50% and only the value of the ox. Let's read a little bit further. Let's read down. But if it becomes known that it was an ox that had gored habitually, now we're talking about an ox that is no more a rookie. It's now an habitual offender from yesterday and before yesterday. Why does he tell us that? So he tells us 3 times, because he gored today, then he gored yesterday, and he gored before yesterday. So 3 times. But his owner did not guard it. He was still very cavalier in his approach to guarding his ox. He shall surely pay an ox in the place of the ox, and the carcass shall be his. Now, what does that mean? He shall surely pay an ox in his ox? Because he has to pay a whole damage. That's what he's talking about. He pays an ox in place of the ox. So if the ox is worth $10,000, he gives the guy $10,000 and he takes the carcass. The guy who did the damage.
Where are you reading from here?
I'm reading from the Chumash.
Oh.
I'm reading from the Chumash. Okay? And not only that, but also he pays b'meitav sodehu. He has to pay from the best of his fields. Means he can't claim that he doesn't have any money or the ox is only worth 20%. He has to go now and sell his land. So you see a great divide. You see a great divide between the initial first damages, where the Hashem was kind and gave you an opportunity and understood all of the difficulties of going through it. But if you didn't pay attention, if it didn't register in your head that you have a responsibility in the world. Remember, we talked about the criteria. The ox has to belong to you, and the ox, it's your responsibility to guard. You have to do everything in your power to do it. And not only your ox, but every single thing that belongs to you. You have to be sure that you are clean of heart, whether it's a fire, because we went through Abba of his Nezikin, right? We talked about a guy who starts a fire in his backyard, and he did it legally. Right, he was gathering all of the leaves, and he was starting a fire, and all of a sudden Hashem sent a wind, and the wind took some sparks and burnt down the guy's storage house. He's responsible, right? We talked about that. We talked about a guy putting a knife in a public domain, or you break a bottle in a public domain. It happens all the time, right? Doesn't it? You walk out of Vaughn's and your bag slips, and all of a sudden you smash 3 containers of milk. Who else does that happen to? Everybody, right? So what does the Torah demand of you? Menschlichkeit is to go and clean it up and get rid of that. Otherwise, you're going to pay. You're going to pay. But you're going to pay a whole damage with these, with the boiler, with the pit, with the ditch, and the fire, and the this. You'll pay full damages. The only time you'll pay half damages is only in this specific case of an ox goring, because that Hashem felt, or at least we felt that Hashem felt that it was beyond our responsibility, and He gave you an opportunity to make amends, And this is gonna. So now we only dealt with the horn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, listen to this. If a man permits a livestock to devour a field or vineyard, whether he set his livestock or he grazed in another's field, meaning whether he sent the ox to go or whether the ox went himself, from the best of his field and the best of his vineyard shall he pay. So from here, we learn, it would seemingly tell us that what happens, that if you were a chazer and you didn't guard your ox, and it went ahead in someone else's field and it grazed there, and you didn't watch it, you have to pay. But remember, we learned last week, we dissected this verse in great detail, right? And we said like this, Ki yaver ish sodei kerem. A man was grazing in a field or in a vineyard, his ox. V'shilach es be'iroi, and then he sent forth his ox. So what was that? V'shilach es be'iroi? Okay, you get a star. V'shilach es be'iroi. He sent forth his foot. That means what kind of damage did the ox do in the person's vineyard? All of the damages which are normal, everyday occurrences that happen. Such as, what would be a normal occurrence? He trampled. Remember, everything that happens in an occurrence not beneficial to the ox, just what happens. He went ahead and he hit his horns and it knocked down a vase, or he did this or he did that. That means it's just an everyday walking. Oxen are very,
they're stupid and they eat too.
And they eat also, yeah.
They're stupid and they eat.
You wouldn't call an ox stupid if you saw it. Trust me.
Big. They are.
They're big and powerful and clumsy.
You're not allowed in my neighborhood.
Oh, no.
And they're
Sissy and ours don't allow oxen.
they're definitely, and they're clumsy. And all the while they're walking, they're doing damage.
Yeah.
Everything that gets damaged while they're walking in their normal way, not with intent. That means the ox didn't get nervous and wanted to gore you, or it wanted to really push you down, and you saw that it was getting angry. It was just doing its normal thing. It was walking through your field. And as it's walking through your field, it's mad as it's killing you. It's killing you. So that comes from the words, V'shilach es be'iroi. He sent forth his ox. Ubir b'stei acher. And then he said, or he grazed in another man's field. That means he went himself. You weren't watching him. This refers to the damages of the tooth. This refers to, and he grazed in another man's field, refers to the damages of the tooth. So in this, what? Because why? Because that's pleasure. So what would be some derivatives of tooth? For example, if we go later on, you can see at the bottom of page, because we have in your hands, what are the derivatives of the, where do you have it? Of the tooth? When the cattle rubbed itself against its wall for its own pleasure and broke it down, or when it spoiled fruit by rolling on them for its own pleasure, right? It was itchy, or it was he squished the animal, or he did his thing on the fruit of somebody else. These are all derivatives. Why? Because that's good for the fertilizer, but it's not good if he does it on your bushel of apples. No. Now, if he does it in your field, that's one thing. But if he does it on your bushel of apples, that's not a good thing. Trust me, it's not a good thing. So therefore, all this verse is written with the intent of telling us two rules and regulations. That both of these cases are very separate, but they have one thing in common. What do? How much do you pay? Full. And what do you pay from? The meitav sodeyu. You pay from the best of your fields. Why the best of your fields? See, it doesn't make a difference. If you come to pay cash, pay cash. If you come to pay, there was three ways you could pay up. Cash, shova kesef, things that are worth money, like this cup, like trade, or real estate. Okay? So now the court said the best thing the guy wants is, of course, cash. Because cash is the easiest way to, you can negotiate with cash, whatever it is. No, and guy says, I don't have any cash. What do you have? I have, what do you call that? Shaveh Kesef is trade. Now trade, they don't care what kind of trade. They says, you know what, I have in my house, I owe you how much? $300. I have $300 worth of oats. Okay, so he brings us $300 worth of oats, even though it's very hard to negotiate in it, but he has it. The owner has to accept it. The damagee has to accept it. If it's worth $300, he has to take the $300 and then go out there and sell it. And that's the way it is. His bad luck. Or oil, if the guy had some oil in his tank, we want the oil in his tank. Whatever it is, that's you can't force the guy to give you. Say, you know what? No, I don't want the oats. I'd rather have the oil. I'd rather have your oil because oil is much more able to be able to trade. Right? Who's going to want oats? You have to have a horse in order to want oats. That you don't have a choice. But if in case he didn't have money or he didn't have any trade, no metaltalin, all he had was real estate. But he had 3 pieces of real estate. Idius, Beninus, and Zobirus. He had very good land, meaning it was flat, it was fertile, it was near a stream. Or he had middle, means it was flat, but it wasn't near a stream. Or Zobirus. He had land on a hill, full of rocks. And then he says, you know what, let me give him $300 worth of land near Chernobyl. You have land in Chernobyl. You have land in let's say in Wyoming. It's not nice. You have land in Idaho, and you have land in Beverly Hills. Okay, these 3. So this guy says, why should I give him the Beverly Hills piece? Let me give him the Chernobyl. No, the Meitav Sodehu. When it comes to the Beverly Hills, as he's going to get. Because now that you're going to make the guy, you're going to force the guy to take the land, sell the land, collect the money. We're going to give him the best, and it's your tough luck. Now you may say, why? If I only had oats, I would get away with it. That's the way it goes. Because we're going to give this guy an opportunity to minimize his effort here in trying to collect the damages which your verstunkene ox did on him. Okay, or whatever your ox did, and then damage, we're going to make it very easy for him to collect his damages.
Will he have the opportunity to sell his piece of rocky land to settle the claim in cash, or does he have to?
Oh no, he has to have cash at the time. Okay. So because if he says, if he says, whoa, give me time, no, there's no time. There's no this period of appealing. There's no such thing. No state execution. Okay, you know what? Let's not get into that because that will take us another half an hour. That'll take us another half an hour. So there
might be interesting.
So here you have a case. They adjudicate, pay up. What do you have to pay? Oh well, I'm going to sell the land. No, you're not. We're going to give him the land. He can sell the land. Why does he have to wait for you to sell the land to pay in cash? So either you have the cash or you don't have the cash. All right. Is there anything else?
In other words, it really almost tells me I can see when you talk about some of these things why there's, if you want to extrapolate to modern times, why there's so much conversation and changes in laws and more laws on top of more laws and on top of more laws.
Of course.
Because we never seem to get it quite right.
Because 1,500
which makes my point.
people.
Which exactly makes my point.
Because
that was the part I agreed with.
Because
that's
so
exactly
this is only a very
point.
basic framework in a way that
it's divine.
there's great room for us to work. To move ourselves up.
And it also has to do
thinking.
with the amount of accountability we each have. You try to mitigate what the things around you do. You try to take responsibility for your own actions. The more responsibility you take, the less the state will take from you.
But there's
so
a difference between you doing
that.
There's a difference between you coming to that, and you having the free will and the mind to think of that, than to be told that. Because if you were told that, if the law was strict, they would say, this is what you do, and this was given at Sinai verbatim. God would have said that already. So that's the difference. That's my point. That he would have said that you give him, you give him $100.
I disagree with you 100%. I disagree with you.
Well, he gave the basics. Oh, come on, it's got to be 99%. Can't be one.
No,
But
because I'll
he
tell you what.
didn't
It can't be
mean
enough.
we could never.
Because if you don't have the basis that this is God-given, I'll tell you what the problem is going to be.
What is
That
God-given?
That this whole general system now is God-given and it's divine. Because if it's not that way, then everything falls apart. Because you know what happens? The only way, I mean, this is my own personal opinion, but the only way that present company excluded, please don't deny this, that judges can stay moral and ethical is if they have the fear of heaven. And it says in the Talmud that if you have Hashem standing in front of you and you believe in this, you'll stay. Otherwise, if it's left up to completely to human and just your own good feeling, it's not going to work. That doesn't mean that there aren't great judges and tremendous great people. Don't get me wrong when I say that. But the system only could work when you have Yirah Shamayim. When the first and foremost thing is fear of God. Once that's lost, this whole system you could throw into the toilet, because it's not going to work one iota. It's just not going to work. Because why? Because then the Rothschilds of the world will control everything. They'll control the judges, they'll control who makes the rules, and that's the way it is.
And the Turek
Right?
Carter.
The Torah Carter. Because that's the way it goes.
That's the way it went for hundreds of years. Who do you think sat on the bench?
That's what it is. There you go. There you go. So my point is, why God cares? God cares because the only way to run a moral and ethical society is to have number one, fear of God. That's the first criteria. That if you sit on that chair, you have to feel as if God is standing in that courtroom right now and is watching you. If you do not have that fear, if you do not have that feeling that you are somehow responsible to Hashem, and you have to come to the conclusion with the best of your ability not to pervert justice, that's it. That doesn't say that there were not great judges that are atheists. We have some atheist judges. But the system has to be first and foremost based upon.
It can be based upon that, but can't we grow?
But you can
Sure you could grow. Sure you could grow, because God gives us the free will. God gives you free will. God gives a judge free will. God lets a judge sit there. What? God says, but what happens? Over a number of years, and this is over and over again, the systems get perverted. And that doesn't mean I'm talking America. We had systems in Sodom and Gomorrah had legal systems. They had judges and they had a legal system and they had courts but their whole system was completely perverted. They had a rule that that if you punched a guy in the nose, he had to pay you $5 because he was bloodletting. He did a medical procedure on you.
But the danger is that there are people that are running around saying the hand of God is in the destruction of New Orleans.
So who cares about those people?
No, but I mean there are people saying it. So if you
so
make
what?
the argument, you
so
interpret
what?
the argument.
You know what? There's going to be people that are going to say. There are people who are going to say a billion different things.
But if you say that you're fearing God, I mean, it opens the door to say that because this happened. God made this happen.
What? Because I say I fear God and I believe that God runs this world, and my job is to pray to Him and to be a good moral person. Why is that going to lead me to say that New Orleans was destroyed because some retard said it? Yeah. That's nothing to do. Real religious people know that they're not judgmental. That first and foremost they keep their mouths shut unless they have something honest to say.
I've met very few of those people.
You know what? Those are truly religious people. And the people that say that they know, know the least. But that has nothing to do with God-fearing. God-fearing, a real God-fearing person is someone who wakes up in the morning and understands that he has a responsibility to human beings and to God, like Moses did. I want to be clean from God and from people. Now, guys, some whack job, somewhere living in Tehran that decides that he's going to make a proclamation. This has nothing to do. Just like I don't believe that these people that are burning down the Danish embassies speak for Islam. They don't speak for Islam. They're just like the Torah Carta don't speak for Judaism. Right. Why? I don't care how they're dressed up. Now, that's
they're Orthodox.
That's what you're saying. You're saying the Torah Carta speaks for Judaism.
No, I didn't say
that. Yes, you did. You said when a God-fearing person. So the next leap is when a guy proclaims that New Orleans. That's like saying that the Torah Carta speaks for Judaism. No, they don't. There's a few for Dreta Mishagoyim that they're sick in their heads. Yeah. They don't speak for anybody. They speak for themselves. And a true Orthodox religious person knows that he only speaks for himself, and he only knows that his responsibility is to himself and to God. And he tries to do the best job possible within the confines, and he has free will. And so, and we're human beings, so every day I try to be a little bit better, a little bit better. That's all a religious person does. And the guys who proclaim that I know what's happening from God belong in a mental institution. I went to visit a guy in a mental institution. Every guy there knows exactly what's going on in my life. They know exactly their seers and their healers and their prophets and their Jesus and their Marys and their Mohammeds. I could show you a whole hospital full of 300 Jesuses running around. And they all know, and well, that's the same place where these guys have to go. Anybody who proclaims that he knows God's intent, now, that doesn't exclude knowing God's intent in the legal system that we try to figure out.
These are the building blocks.
These are the building blocks of civilization. That's what they are, plain and simple building blocks of civilization given to human beings to try to make sense of it.
You know, when I get together with Jewish people and they say to me, you know, they'll bring up some of these comments and somebody said this and somebody said, you know, the big thing I say, if you understood Judaism, if you knew what Judaism was about, and if they're on the wrong path. They only pick out the things.
We're smart people. We pride ourselves on being wise, smart people. Jews are supposed to be wise. They're supposed to be smart. They're supposed to be erudite. Why fall into this narrow trap? Because a guy says something. Because people are lazy, intellectual, lazy people.
That's exactly.
That's all it is. They're lazy. Just like people.
I make a lot of enemies when I say you don't know what you're talking about. You need to sit and study things before you make.
People are lazy. You know why? Listen, let's be honest, Charlotte. Let's be honest. We're not talking about the Talmud. You know why Reform movement was successful? Because it's bloody easy. The Reform movement is bloody easy. They threw out everything. Isn't it easier to do nothing? It's easier to say, listen, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in anything, I don't care what happens, I'll live my life and a moral, ethical life, and I don't have to do nothing. That's what who doesn't like that? No, it's easy to live a life where on 25 hours you have to sit like a dumb cuff on Shabbos doing nothing, and then you have to run 20 miles to buy an old hamburger, or you have to wear tzitzis when it's 95 degrees. Who likes all these rules and regulations?
But what do they have to do with this?
What?
What do they have to do with this discussion?
Who's they?
The Reform movement?
No, because Charlotte said that people say, that she says something.
I'm curious how they get into this.
No, because they're exactly the same, the mirror image of the guy who says, I know. They're exactly the mirror image. Because their argument is, we don't know. We don't know. You think this guy Ravina and Ravashi were anything special? They were nobodies. They were just like me. They had their idiosyncrasies. Once you say that and you knock out the whole system, then you might say it about Moses the same way. What do you think Moses was something special? He was a guy that had some leadership qualities, but there was nothing special about him, and that's how you end up. That's how you end up with a Reform movement, by knocking out the very foundations, the very pillars of the entire religion, and then you end up with a schizophrenic conservative movement that doesn't know which way to turn. They're a little bit here and a little bit like that and a little bit this. Paul, you'll edit this later on. We don't want this going out to the public.
Well at the Board of Rabbis meeting, I can tell you that.
But you know what? I'll tell you the honest truth. By now, I don't care. Who cares? I'll tell you honestly, I don't care. I don't care anymore because everybody knows the truth already. They know the truth.
True.
Yeah.
They know the truth. If Reform knows the truth, that they threw out the baby with the bathwater. Maybe they had a good intent. Maybe their intentions were, listen, we'll make it.
I don't
know how we got to that.
She was saying that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, but that's a whole.
What you say, I was saying, it has to be based on knowledge.
People are lazy.
Information.
We are the laziest, dumbest people in the face of the earth. Let me tell you that. Because we take so many things for granted. We are in the greatest blessed country in the entire universe. We're separated by oceans from Michigan, and yet we are lazy beyond compare. Americans, we work hard. Not saying we don't work hard, but intellectually we're so lazy. You ask someone a question that doesn't have to deal with what's said on Entertainment Tonight, forget about it. Or Jerry Springer or things.
But the same thing that you're saying about, I mean, I'm not defending
Yeah.
the Reform and Conservative movement, the same things that you're saying about them, I've heard other branches of Orthodoxy say about the Lubavitchers.
That they're lazy?
Or that, not that they're
That they're
lazy,
on-
but that, you know, not that they're lazy, but that, you know, that the way they do things are crazy and they're doing it, and running around, you know.
And they think they're the only ones who know.
That's
No,
right,
no,
we
and
are.
missionizing
That's
and
the
all
thing,
that.
we are.
And then you got the other, and they're fighting each other.
The thing is that the only true statement,
This is the
only
problem
true
with Judaism.
statement
Thank God.
that there is, there's only two types of Jews in the world, Judge. You know what
This
they
is the
are?
crux.
Lubavitchers and,
Everybody
no,
That's
Lubavitchers.
exactly.
Lubavitchers and will be Lubavitchers.
But that's not happening. That
Those are
we
the
went
only
from,
two types
you know,
of Jews in the world.
Yeah.
Why? And the proof is in the pudding. Listen,
A
the
Jew
proof
is a
is in
Jew.
the
It
pudding.
doesn't mean what
You
it
can't
is.
argue with success.
Jew is a Jew.
And
Doesn't matter.
4,000. Who's sitting here tonight? Who's sitting here tonight? There's a Satmar guy sitting over here. Is a Belzer guy sitting over here? Is a Litvak sitting over here? No. You got a Lubavitcher sitting over here. Oh, no, one Litvak over here. Two Litvaks.
Good for
Two
you.
Litvaks. I'm talking about the
Who let
teacher.
them in?
The teacher. No, but you know why? Because the proof in the pudding is that if you do care about Yiddishkeit, and you're not lazy, and you're not intellectually lazy, but you want to study, and you want to learn the good points about Reform. I want to know about Reform, and I read Abraham Geiger, and I read about Solomon Schechter, and I read about Zacharias Frankel, and I'm curious about these movements. But I know in my heart of hearts that these movements are temporary. And in the long scheme of things, over 1,000, 2,000 years, I believe, this is not my own personal opinion, that only orthodoxy will get us from point A to point B. Why? Because it's discipline.
Okay.
And discipline is going to survive.
right.
Without discipline,
But
it's
you
gone.
don't say to the rest of us sitting
Yeah.
at this table,
Yeah, of course not.
get out.
No, absolutely not.
Yep.
Because to me,
You
should
me,
daven in Long Beach on Saturday morning and you'll know what discipline's all about.
Jew.
You know, if you ever davened in Long Beach on a
Jew.
Saturday
yeah.
morning.
No, you know why? Because I believe.
Then you'll know what discipline is.
We're finished with the tooth and door.
I had to
Now
turn
we're
around
talking
myself, the
general
boy that I am,
philosophy.
and tell him,
You know
listen,
why?
boys,
Because
the
I
Torah's out, be
believe
quiet.
that one
Everybody, blah, blah,
mitzvah,
blah,
you
blah,
should
blah,
do
blah,
one
makes this
mitzvah
here
is
look like
better
it's
than
quiet.
doing no mitzvahs. If you do 2 mitzvahs, it's better than doing 1. If you do 3, it's better than doing 2. And that's why we encourage everyone, regardless of race affiliation, nationality, or sexual orientation, religious background, religion, as a matter of fact.
Land of birth.
We have, where you were born. I don't care in our show, where you are, because
That's a very different Lubavitch than it was when I first walked into the Hebrew
Well,
Academy
in New
on
York.
Atlantic Avenue in 1973.
But yeah, things
It's changed
things
considerably.
evolve. Things evolve, and our shul is very special because if Lubavitchers know everything, we know more than everything. Our shul is the cherry on top of the Boston cream pie. If Lubavitch is that, because I think that I think we've been able to establish where we have all different types, of opinions, but we understand that there's respect. See, I don't care a guy who's passionate about his positions. I don't care if a guy is passionate liberal or is a passionate conservative. I don't care about that. As long as you have respect for someone else, as long as you know that I may not agree with you and you don't agree with me, that's fine. Listen,
But
that's
you
what-
need knowledge for
But
discussion.
you can't
It's just
disparage
thinking
other
that.
sects
You
of
have to be
Judaism.
informed.
Right.
You have to be informed, so I may not agree with everything, or I may see changes that need to be made, but I still have to inform myself of the basics before
You
I can
have
talk
to
about
learn.
it.
You have
Can't
to
talk
learn.
about
You
it
have to
unless you
learn.
inform
That's it. You
yourself.
have to learn. But you know what? Listen, to run a Jewish organization is you're running into a buzzsaw. Why? Because Jews by nature think they know everything.
Right.
They know everything, and you can't convince a
You
guy
looked at
that
me.
runs a
You looked at me.
50 million. What?
You looked at me when you said that.
No, I didn't.
I don't know everything. That's why I asked the question.
No. But you can't convince a guy. You know what?
Exactly.
It's hard to convince a guy who runs a $50 million company that he doesn't know everything. Because he took this nothing company and built it into a $50 million company. He's now the expert on everything. Forget about that. He's only the expert on selling jeans. No, this guy knows how to sell jeans. But once you're ready,
Britney Spears knows everything.
Except how to be a good one.
Okay.
See, that's.
Britney Spears.
I agree.
Michael Jackson
I agree.
knows everything.
No, Michael Jackson, forget about it.
Listening.
Britney Spears,
He's a heck of a
agree.
basketball player.
I think she knows everything.
I think it's a mitzvah.
But the thing is, it's hard to convince people that they don't know. Like I get into this argument all the time with the supporters of the show. No, they're wealthy, they have the money, they know. So so we go into this argument all the time, and I say, listen, I know what's best for religion. You know what's best for selling jeans. But trust me. So sometimes I win, but it's hard to get into that guy's head that he doesn't know everything about everything. But that's when you're dealing with Jews. When you're dealing with Jews, they all know everything.
It makes for a lively discussion, I think.
It makes for a great discussion.
See, if we're
Do you
not
think
rich,
these
we
guys
don't
sat
know
there
everything.
and thank God though, the guys that wrote the Talmud,
yeah.
if they sat there and went, oh, he's right because he's Orthodox, and they all sat there like this,
They were all
we would have got
Orthodox.
Oh,
nowhere.
they were all
No,
Orthodox.
but you see what the point is?
What is
they had-
Orthodox? You keep throwing Orthodox
The
out
five
like it's
commandments,
like it's
that
some
were in it.
like it's some
No,
uniform
they were all
thing.
Jewish. They
You
didn't have a label, right?
5,000 parties in Israel. 5,000 different
What,
Orthodox parties.
but
What
the
is
people,
Orthodox?
but the people in the Talmud all came from one theological position.
It evolved. It evolved. It didn't.
What do you mean? I don't know what you mean by evolved.
It evolved. It didn't start out. It didn't start out doing the same things that they're doing today. We had sacrifice. They had sacrifices not only in one place, in other places. They
Right.
split out. I mean, there was all kinds of things going on that evolved us.
No,
to
but
today.
orthodoxy all it means
Means
is
right
that-
thinking.
And right thinking. That's all they had. They had the same kind of thinking, that they believed in the divinity of the process that they're following. That's all. That's why they separated from the Sadducees. Where the Sadducees didn't believe in the process. After the temple,
Or the Essenes.
the Sadducees died. They disappeared. They were gone. There were no more Sadducees. The Pharisees took over, and basically, this is what we have today. But that's
Azoigatus.
Zoigatus.
Well, I enjoyed
Good
this.
gazoo.
I need a nap.
Good gazoo.